So now we move straight on to our next panel, panel 4. Which is expanding capabilities of automation, success stories and lessons learned. And I do love real success stories. So with that, we have Cetin Karakus, who is our moderator. He is Global Head of Quantitative and Analytical Solutions at BP. Cetin, over to you.
Yes, hello and welcome to the panel, Expanding the Capabilities of Automation. My name is Cetin Karakus. I'll be the moderator for today's session. So with me is a distinguished panel of industry veterans with eclectic set of backgrounds. So I will start with asking our panelists to briefly introduce themselves in alphabetical order. Einar, with you. Jaco, I guess you're the next one.
Yeah, Einar froze, I guess. It's cold out there. So I'm Jaco Fock, very grateful to be here. It'll be a pleasure again to meet so many bright minds. I am Chief Innovation of OMV Petrom and tasked since 2017 to make that company more innovative and more digitally dexterous. Do so with a team across all divisions and mostly focused on people change, I must say. Technology is very important, but people change is, I think, the main thing I'm working on.
Neil?
Yeah, hi, my name's Neil Pickering. I'm with a company called Veritas. So I've spent 34 years now in the oil and gas industry. So yeah, a long time. So I've seen every downturn and lived through it so far, touch wood. So yeah, it should be an interesting experience for me anyway, getting involved in discussions around this. But for the last 2 years, almost 3 years now, I've been with Bureau Veritas and been sheep dipped, I guess, into the digital world, which includes automation, digital twins, etc. So yeah, so I've been on a rapid learning curve, and in the asset management arena, been very active with Bureau Veritas in that space. So yeah, it should be an interesting discussion.
Okay, we have Einar back. So.
Yeah, sorry about that. Finger trouble here. Also sorry about the noises behind me. There is some work ongoing outside my house. But yeah, Einar, I'm basically a computer scientist by training and education. Spent 20 years of my work life in computer software, say non-energy business, and the last 15 in Equinor. So I think I see the world from two views. One way is the oil and gas industry view, and other is the computer side or digital side of things. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Ron Beck, talking to you today from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the Marketing Strategy Director at Aspen Technology, and I have 40 plus years experience in the chemical engineering and energy industries. And so today, I've spent the last 2 years at Aspen Tech working on our introduction, which we did about a month ago, of a really exciting new area called hybrid models, which is really the interface between conventional automation and engineering and the world of AI. So pretty exciting. And now I'm working on how to apply all of these technologies to the sustainability area.
And we don't have Udayan with us, right? Okay. Let's start with. I would like to start with exploring some of the new developments we are observing with regard to automation. So I'll start with Neil. You've been in offshore operation where automation plays a critical role. So what are your observations?
Yeah, okay, Cetin, thanks. Okay, so my observations, like I say, 30 odd years and mostly operations and maintenance side of the upstream business. So first observation, my view is, having spent the last 2 years in the digital world, if you like, so I think one of the things that this industry, oil and gas industry in particular, is struggling with is the pace of change. And I know it's been mentioned a few times today, and the previous case study there was talking about drop the barriers to pace, but the sheer pace of change, I think the oil and gas industry is not used to this speed. And they're having a real tough time of it. You know, in the past, it's been quite slow and quite evolutionary almost in its movement. Today, it's what I would term as fast, and then and in the future, it's going to approach light speed. So the industry itself is really, in my view, struggling with the pace of change. I think another observation I would make is that there is an apparent reluctance in the industry, although in the last 6 to 7 months since the world has completely changed. Before that, there was a reluctance to accept other industry successes, because if you look at the automotive industry, the aerospace industry, the defense industry, the medical industry, the nuclear industry, digitalization has been there for the last 20 years. We have a partnering agreement with Dassault Systems, and we offer a digital twin into the marketplace. And the first time I met the guys at Dassault, they were quite amused to hear that the oil and gas industry wasn't at the same place as the other industries. So, I like to say, I think that is changing, and it is down to the circumstances that we find ourselves in and we've gone through in the last months. I've heard a lot today about data. Well, I can guarantee that the oil and gas industry has sufficient amounts of data to sink a battleship. It constantly gathers data. What it doesn't have, and what I think current technology can offer into the oil and gas industry, is it doesn't have a rapid, agile ability to turn that data into information. Now, if I counted up the number of man hours that I've probably spent building spreadsheets in order to convert the data into information, then it would be a lot of money, I can guarantee. Now, the technology that's available allows us to convert that data into information almost instantaneously. So, the oil and gas industry has a lot of data, probably too much data. Another observation I would make, so automation or digitalization will allow humans to focus on what is important. Now, this is one of the fascinating discussions. Is there's an immediate resistance to automation or digitalization in the oil and gas industry because it's immediately seen as a job threat. It's going to stop. It's going to take humans. It's not. What it's going to do is it's going to allow the ever decreasing skill pool in the offshore oil and gas industry to focus on what is important and stop wasting man hours crunching numbers to get to the point of being able to make a decision. So that's one of the acceptances they need to make. In the offshore industry, equipment fails usually when people fiddle with it immediately afterwards. Like I say, operations and maintenance most of my life, you can guarantee that as soon as routine maintenance is carried out on something, you're going to get a failure at some point in the not too distant future. Another observation would be oil and gas. The oil and gas industry generally only does stuff when it has to. So whether it's regulatory driven, whether it's legislatively driven or whatever. But now, particularly in the last year almost now, I suppose, a lot's changed. We've got economic return. So shareholders are now investors are actively backing away from hydrocarbons. You've got net zero, which is firmly on the agenda. It's going into legislation, to regulation, and to law in a lot of countries. So therefore, companies have to do this, and the sheer will to survive, because oil and gas companies have a bad image. Let's face it. Let's be honest and brutal about it. Now, the majors are making very, very positive and quick moves to reposition themselves as energy companies, and quite rightly so. So good on them. But the smaller ones are struggling. So they're the ones that probably need more help than the big guys. And then finally, it's about, I don't know, another observation. I use a term called digital magpies. So you get people who are suddenly faced with this sweetie shop full of digital capability and widgets. And it's like a shopping trolley grab. They run in with a shopping trolley, fill the basket full, run out, and then suddenly decide, well, what are we going to do with all this stuff? So another observation I would make in this industry in particular is time out. What is it you want to achieve? You know, whenever we have a discussion with clients about digital twins that we put into the marketplace with Dassault, the first questions we ask is, right, what is it you want it to do for you? Because quite often people buy stuff or invest in stuff that, you know, quite frankly, it's OTT. So I don't know. There's a few observations from my experience well, certainly in the upstream oil and gas business.
Yeah, many interesting observations. So, Jaco, how do you see some of the innovations in the space? Like Neil mentioned about the pace of changes. What's your observations?
Yeah, so of course, like the others will also testify, there's tons of changes happening all at the same time. Digitalization is grabbing everything at the moment, and everything is developing exponentially. So technologically, things are moving indeed at light speed. I think still the biggest change that is currently happening is or sure the latest change that we see it, and also the one I'm driving at my company, is the use of citizen developers. More and more, this is not just a matter of big technology. What oil and gas has always been about. It's always been about big technology. Now it's more and more about the individual people. It's about people change management, and I think Gartner some time ago researched it and said about 70% of success of digitalization projects is due to people. It's the people change component, people's mindset, attitude, skill set, of course, are determining the success for the major part of the balance. And what you see more and more companies talking about and using, and I believe also in Equinor, Einar will be able to testify about that, is the use of citizen developers. So citizen developers putting the tools and the skills in the hands of people, so they can solve their own or their departmental digitalization challenges, is speeding up the entire digital transformation, as well as making these individuals and departments ready for the larger introductions of the data warehouses. All IoT devices can bring us tons and tons of data. But if only a handful of people benefit from that, then we're still not getting the value out of it. And so by mobilizing citizen developers, by spreading the usage of digital tools and digital knowledge and digital ways of working, we vastly increase the utilization of the larger digital investments. And so this year, we at OMV Petrom, we're introducing data visualization, and then thereafter automation, desktop automation mostly, and thereafter advanced analytics. And we're putting them by means of self-help kits into the hands of the people. We're giving people these tools. We're giving people the opportunity to embark on learning journeys that we've defined using a subscription to Microsoft LinkedIn, and defining certain learning paths in that. We give these people the possibility to learn themselves at their own pace, making use of these tools for their own personal or departmental issues, and that works very motivating, and it changes the people. It changes the people in the sense of mindset, skill set, but also teaches people the value of data. If you have to juggle your own data and you have to analyze your own data, and you discover that your own data is faulty or there's gaps, then you do something about it, and that also paves the way from a mindset, skill set, but also data governance perspective for the larger corporate investments. So I think if there's one trend, next to the obvious ones of AI and advanced analytics and machine learning, of course, which is happening everywhere at the moment, I think the biggest thing that's happening is the utilization of citizen developers.
Yeah, excellent point. Completely resonates with me as well. It's like Wikipedia versus Britannica model, right? Where you basically can incorporate everyone and then something great emerges. So now, Einar, I would like to ask you, with any new automation technology, that has to be integrated with the existing technology estate, right? So what are the like, how easy will that be, like incorporating a new automation into the existing tech landscape, and what are the challenges or opportunities in such an effort?
I think that one of the, I was just thinking around that question, is that of course one of the bigger changes or challenges is related to the different architectures and mindset in, for example, IT and automation. So of course, and the way we have been approaching data in those two different areas, where my perception, at least from Equinor side, is that people are engaged in, say, for a lot of people in the automation area running plants, they are satisfied with getting the data into their historians, and the world continues as always have. And now we will see that we are able to redefine data as something that is valuable for others outside the tight group of people, which of course means that they become producers of data for others. That's they've never been. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges here.
Yeah, I heard the distinction between the engineers, meaning like upstream engineers who generate the data, versus IT, who are supposedly doing a lot, less serious or less data intensive work. But that's kind of, to me, it looks a bit artificial. Now, I would like to move on to our next topic, which is how automation can create commercial value. Like, what would be the success in automation can create the commercial value? So I'll start with Ron. What is your thoughts on this? And I mean, I know you're on kind of the marketing side, but assuming that there is a kind of a success, what would be the best way to kind of market this or sell this, or get the stakeholders buy-in? What's your views?
Yeah, so yeah, probably I'm a little bit of a different perspective on this panel. Like you said, I'm in the marketing function, and we've heard some topics that are really about mobilizing data and IT, and how do you move to things like citizen programmers. But really, to me, I think that, look, for the oil and gas industry today, it faces an existential challenge, really. I think it was mentioned earlier, but I mean, in the U.S., J.P. Morgan Chase, who's probably the largest worldwide investor in energy projects, has set up a very strict set of metrics as to why or how they're going to recommend to investors to put any future money in the oil and gas industry. The pace of change is too slow, and the conventional approaches aren't working. But I think that it's all about where is the value and how to learn from it. So I think that is the biggest challenge, is to, and that's, as a marketing person, that's what I've spent my whole career on. How do you look at technology and explain it to an executive who can spend the money in terms of value? And I think this is the challenge, that people are moving data around, playing with analytics, but it's about creating value. And I think that it's very important to focus on mapping the technology to the key business challenges the company has. And the business challenge today is really about sustainability. It's about how do you get to, if companies are promising to get to net carbon zero in Europe, how do you do that? It's a pretty large project. But how do you break it into small areas? And I guess I'd like to challenge the industry that, in terms of sharing the value of a success, it's about companies being willing to share. And I think that's the oil and gas industry, I've worked in that industry for 35 to 40 years, doesn't like to share. So the industry thinks of data fundamentally as secret. I think this all comes from biggest quantities of data are the geological and formation and reserve data and production data that nobody wants to share that. And I think there's a whole new way to think about it, that in an environment where the whole industry needs to figure out, A, how do we work remotely all of a sudden? B, how do we save money because the demand is never going to come back to where it was? And how do we work within an environment of global insistence on progress on sustainability and the oil and gas industry proving that it can be a green solution in the world? There has to be sharing of projects between companies. So, I'll give you an example. We just introduced this thing called hybrid models, which ties together conventional models with future models. Well, one of the best examples we have is in the upstream industry, a company producing gas in the U.S. with a lot of revenue sharing issues and applied advanced analytics for that revenue sharing, but they're not willing to share what they're doing. Somehow they feel like it's a competitive advantage, which it's not. And so in contrast, so that impedes the ability of another company to learn from what one company did and gain confidence at a executive level, the people who invest the time and money, that this will add value. In contrast, we're working in the chemical industry with Reliance Industries in India, who was willing to share what we did with them, which is very exciting, taking basically advanced polymer lines which were failing on a much too frequent basis and figuring out how to understand the details of what's happening inside. And the value there is, upwards of $80 million a year on one polymer line. So their willingness to share that with other companies is critical for the whole industry to attain better performance. I think that's the crucial challenge there. So I think that's something the industry needs to think about. All these projects, I even see in the presentations today, a lot of the stuff that's being presented is a little bit vague. And the reason is because companies aren't willing to share. The clients aren't willing to share. So then the stuff that's presented, well, we can do a digital twin in 8 weeks. Yes, but show me the example and what's the value? Well, they can't share the value because the owner won't share it. And that's really short-sighted. I think it really is in today's world because everyone needs to move much more faster together. I'd say one of the biggest pitfalls I see is companies always want to pick the hardest problem to solve, especially when you're applying data science and analytics. And, if you think about it, yes, you can solve the biggest problems, but it's going to take the longest to solve by the very nature that they're the hardest problems. So by picking simpler problems, but that map up with creating value, you can succeed faster. You can market it within your company that this succeeded. Now let's do more. But you can also achieve more following on that. So those are just a few thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, excellent. I think sharing, everyone will agree, will help. But aren't we being a little bit harsh to the oil industry? Like, for example, Amazon or Google will share their data center data, how they utilizing their computers or traffic. To me, that seems like the sort of data oil company wouldn't share, for example, when they get the upstream data.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's an interesting thought process because data actually has value. I mean, there was an article a couple of years ago, I think in the Wall Street Journal, that titled "Data is the New Oil." That the data the oil companies have is worth more than their oil. It's a thought, but yeah, but that came up because, for example, analytics to solve maintenance problems for prescriptive maintenance. I mean, it's extremely big, I would call it the low-hanging fruit, because this is a solution area that works. And so again, well, what's the value of hoarding your individual, let's say, oil platform or gas processing plant or whatever, or, refineries data in one place, or carbon capture systems data? Why not share everybody's carbon capture data across all of the companies so that all the systems work better? Well, then a friend of mine who's in the financial community, who does financial engineering, immediately said, yeah, but now you have marginal value of the data. Why would, let's say, BP share it with Shell without getting money back for the value of that data? Or if you're a big player, why would you share it with a little player? Well, those are all interesting questions.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the risks involved with introduction of any new technology, such as automation, and what would be the best way to mitigate such risks. So, Neil, any war stories? I'm sure you have through your experience.
Whether the war stories or not, but again, risks. Oil and gas industry is a risky business. What's mission critical? So, a few facts. So, hydrocarbon demand globally has significantly changed, or been disrupted. Oil price, in all likelihood, the analysts are saying, is not going to return to the former levels. We've got energy transition, net zero, racing up agendas, and been put into law in a number of countries, and the pace of change is exponential. So they're just a few facts in amongst many. So what's mission critical for the change or the transformation? I've heard it called a few things today. Embrace technology and use it, but use it to derive what adds value to your business. Like I say, don't be a digital magpie, because you'll just end up with a whole bunch of widgets that you don't need. So what is it you want to achieve with it? And I think one of the other things as well in amongst all this is the generation change that is happening now. So the likes of my generation, we haven't got long left. The younger generations that are coming through expect all of this. They were born with smartphones in their hands. You're talking to a guy here who could remember there was only 3 channels on the television. So that, the whole generation changes that's happening in the industry, and these guys are coming through and they're taking up senior positions. They expect all of this to be happening, and use the supply chain. Quite all too often, and I still hear it today, although it's getting less and less and less. And this is an example, I guess, of the 4 states of change, where there was almost decades of denial, but now they're into acceptance, and some are moving into exploration and getting on with it. But use the supply chain. I still hear it today. But we're going to do that ourselves. Well, why would you? There's companies out there who do this for a living. Go and use the supply chain and make sure that you use them well. And management of change control. So if anybody's got any aspiration at all of moving towards remote operations, the question is, what is remote? We do remote operations now. You have a control room, you have the plant out on the asset. Okay, it might only be a few yards, but it is remote. So all you're doing is removing that control room to the beach. Now, I've been at a number of these conferences, and there was some numbers quoted, not mine, but a core offshore individual costs about £1 million a year. Okay, a core onshore individual costs about £200,000 a year. So you don't have to be a mathematical genius to work out that if you can reduce your offshore manning by half, and that's a significant contribution to your unit operating costs of any offshore installation. So, what's mission critical is really just understand what your business needs. The technology exists. It doesn't matter what you were trying to do in this space. It exists. We've come exponentially over the last 10 years, 5 years. If you want to achieve something, the technology will be there, or you can bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow somebody will have invented it and it'll be tried and tested, because that's the speed of this stuff getting to market now is incredibly fast. So just, just make sure that the risk is that you try to do everything at once. And I heard it mentioned earlier on is, it's a big elephant to eat. Just take it one leg at a time. And I think Kongsberg, when they were doing their case study there, a lot of this digital transformation or digital change or whatever term you care to use can be staged, it can be phased, it can be progressive. You don't have to do it all at once. Start with a small piece, build it, and then you get the management of change control that you need. Because in amongst all of this, every single time, there's these things called people, human beings, and they are, we all know we are the biggest resistors of change. And if we sniff that this is going to change the way we do things, then you've got to manage to change. So I haven't got any war stories, no, but there's a few examples in there that I come across time and time again. They are getting less and less and less. So that, we are moving up the curve in terms of acceptance. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would say.
Einar, what do you see the major risk when it comes to the data management?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I want to tell a short story. If those who remember, but the Air France flight 447 went down 11 years ago. Of course, they lost a temperature reading due to ice. That also made the autopilot throw in its cards, and the crew stalled out the aircraft. And of course, that says something about how, when we say are dependent on data, we so easily we make mistakes. Same if you move into the area of machine learning, of course, biased training data giving us biased predictions. And so with that backdrop, I think that understanding how the data influence both automated and human controlled systems is extremely important. And of course, if you move down the legal route, of course, you come into this with who has ownership and data coming on in the wrong place. But I think the key thing is to understand that data quality is everything when you move into and that basically then the data management practices need to be focused on establishing equality.
Excellent. Jaco, what do you think is the best way to balance these risks against the need to risk of introducing new technologies against the need to innovate new technologies?
Yeah, I was just happy to hear Einar speak because also I have my notes here, and one of the things is indeed biased AIs, and machine learnings that are extrapolating in areas that maybe they were not intended to, and the whole thing reminds me a little bit, and since we're all old guys together, some of you may remember as well the introduction of the calculator, and all of a sudden you were able to use a calculator at school, and some people went nuts and they type in two numbers, they multiply them, and then just write down the answer, which is the stupidest thing you can do because every now and then you make a typo. And the same thing happens with machine learning and AI. The fact that we have AI, the fact that we have machine learning doesn't exclude us from thinking. And so when you talk about balance, I think it's very important that we keep balancing the introduction of AI with the upskilling of people, because as people, I've seen many times that there is an over reliance on technology. If the machine or if the computer somehow says it's okay, then you're actually assuming it's okay, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes the computer is just outside its range, or at some point in time there's been a nerd who's been programming that machine learning algorithm, introducing it, and maybe there was a small error, and so we have to keep thinking. For us, we have to also actively be aware of indeed biased AI, but even if it's not biased, AI is typically, if you build an algorithm, it's typically built on the past. And that means that you're looking at the past and you're creating the machine version of, yeah, but you know what? This is the way we always did this, right? And so we should be doing it this way. And we're creating the AI variety of resistance to change. And so I would advocate for, again, a balance between the human skills and the AI skills that we're now so heavily going to rely on. The aircraft was another example, but there's continuously examples where people are over-relying on technology and forgetting that we also have a brain and it needs to sort of add up a little bit. Then again, also automation that we talked about earlier, by robotic process automation or desktop automation or go all the way to BPMS, like for big processes. What that does and what automation does in general is fixing us. We've decided that this is the most optimal process. Bang, let's automate it. But that also means you can be really efficient in being stupid. And we're being 1,000 times more efficient in being stupid than we were before, but we can still be really, really stupid. And so I see a lot of automation happening just to automate. And inside our company, OMV Petrom, we call this smart automation. So every process is turned over. Can we maybe eliminate steps? If we go digital, maybe we should not do it in the same way. And automation tends to fix things for years because all of a sudden it's out of our visibility, and we're all of us are firefighters, right? Every day is filled with what is our most urgent issue, and if you've automated something silly away, then you won't see it anymore. It won't show up on your radar, and be very careful in automating inefficiencies, automating things that are intrinsically actually not that great of an idea. And so here you have all this digitalization and automation actually potentially in the future slowing us down in our creative thinking, in our agility. And many of you, again, the calculator was maybe a little bit of an old example, but SAP introductions, I'm sure most of you have gone through, one of your most wonderful years spent on SAP introductions. And what SAP introductions typically do, also they sort of make you extremely rigid, because once you have to go to a new version of SAP even, let alone, God forbid, to go to an entirely different ERP system, it's prohibitive. It's prohibitively costly. So when you talk about balancing automation and innovation, I would say be really, really careful how far you automate to limit the way in which you fix yourself, and also balance the way in which you educate the human factor to balance out the reliance and potential over-reliance on AI.
Excellent points. Yeah, automation for the sake of automation, definitely not good. So we have limited time, so I want to just explore the final point, which is how we can use the edge analytics or integrate the existing technology with the edge devices to generate advanced operational analytics. I start with you, Einar. So what are the how do you see the edge computing place in the overall enterprise system architecture, and what will be the so how much of the analytics should be generated on edge versus the backend, corporate systems?
Yeah, that's a quite interesting question, because what we see, of course, is there is to some extent some battle on that ground. Some people wanted to, of course, that all analytics should be done at the data center level or the cloud, while others see that, yes, okay, but if we are able to push, say, smartness into the edge, making machines smarter to make their own decisions on say operational topics, their health, whatever. That is a good thing. But I think it's a long journey to go into that changed mindset, that it's not about collecting data at the edge and bringing it to the center, but it's also about making the edge smarter. So the compressor can say that, okay, I'm fine to run on 80% load. That means that my bearing that is halting can be prolonged, expected to live for, say 2 days more, so you can get the repairs. So it can gives you, say, by having more intelligent machines, you can basically have a much more flexible production lines, whatever you do in oil and gas or anything else. I think that is a different change in attitude than just saying that, yes, we put edge sensors everywhere and then collect data and process data and then make decisions.
Interesting. So, Ron, I mean, how do you see this, Einar's point about the analytics automation symbiosis? How do you think that can drive new product introduction? Do you have any examples?
Yeah. So I mean, I actually like the combination of the 2 points that Jaco and Einar made, because I think they're combined together. So I think fundamentally, let me just go back to what Einar was just talking about, the edge. Okay, so fundamentally the edge is just a computing method. It's putting computing capability at the equipment or at the remote location. But question really is the complex system versus the individual items. And so what can you sort of automate in an isolated way to make the equipment smarter and do things it should be doing, but also to inform you, look, something's not right with me. I mean, that's fundamentally making it smart, using information to really not just copy what some algorithm someone has put in, but to inform you that something's happening unexpected and I'm not operating properly. Versus the things that still are much more complex and need a lot of types of information to get insight. And I think that's where it solves the conundrum that Jaco said, that the place to apply analytics and AI, I think they are extremely important and they are extremely valuable, and they do take you far beyond where you've been before. All you have to do is think about something like Google Maps, but use it for those things where a human being can't look at all that quantity of data in the time required to make a decision. So that's where this idea of, let's say, combining, but this is where the combining of the conventional with the advanced is important. So that we think of it as the conventional technology, the conventional models, they provide the sort of common sense guardrails, the rules of chemistry and physics and safety around what the data is telling you, so that it somehow blocks you from making stupid decisions or from making the automated system to make stupid decisions. I think the best example of the symbiosis between automation and analytics is advanced process control. So advanced process control today, 25 years ago it wasn't, but today it's considered to be proven, maybe a little boring automation. It's not been used that much in upstream, even though it's exceedingly valuable in upstream. And what's the reason? The reason is there are only, to our count, a couple thousand real experts in advanced process control in the world, and that holds back the whole domain. So what we've done is built advanced analytics intelligence, some AI intelligence into the process of deploying an APC system. So looking at what does an expert who knows how to deploy an APC system do over the period of a couple of months to examine the way the process is running and develop the right controllers to control that process in an effective way. And so using AI to basically take let's say somebody who's a petroleum engineer and now he's going to be doing APC engineering. It's a foreign world to him, although he's a smart engineer. But now AI can help him to do this, highly, in the past, viewed to be an art almost, but can now deploy it all over the upstream area. And by the way, waste of energy can get upstream companies, according to McKinsey, about 20% of the way towards zero carbon. So if you can deploy it that way, now you're applying tools with advanced tools, and I think it's an excellent example of how to overcome the knowledge gap in the world.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. I think we are almost kind of running out of time, 20 seconds. So thank you very much for your valuable contributions. I hope, unfortunately, we didn't have time for the audience questions, but I think we covered some of the questions I seen in our discussions. And hopefully you found our panelists' insights helpful.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Cetin. Thanks to the whole panel. That was really, really interesting. And as ever, not enough time to cover everything that I know. There was a question that came in about understanding the LinkedIn training for the citizen. What was it for the? Hang on a second. It was for the citizen developers. Yeah. So maybe that's something that you can discuss on the chat box after. If you go to the chat box, that's where that question came. I pulled lots of interesting things out of that panel. I mean, one of them was, and these are just a few things, digital is not a job threat. It will instead allow depleting numbers of oil people to focus on what's important. I think that's a really great, positive way of thinking about it. I like the don't be a digital magpie, very simple thing. We've all done that at home, as well as how many speaker systems have we all got that we don't use, et cetera, et cetera. Careful not to be efficiently stupid. You can do this really easily. That's another super thing or an interesting discussion you've all had. Of course, I talked about this kind of citizen developers idea. I think that's a super one. And that could do with a bit more discussion later on in this event. And then I also liked, just as a wrap up on my kind of summary of that, new business challenge is net zero and sustainability, which we know, but how to map the digital technology to this new challenge. And that's really not started yet. Massive opportunity and a key enabler. So really super panel.